Union Station in Los Angeles has always struck me as something between a cathedral and a terminal. Its cavernous arches, the amber light pooling from vintage Art Deco fixtures, the strange hush that settles over its long halls, despite the constant motion of bodies and trains. I went there often the spring after my brother Eric stopped answering my calls. No one officially declared him missing. He was 37, no spouse or children, and his work in computer forensics kept him mobile and off-grid for long stretches. Still, the last text he sent, just "it loops," followed by coordinates that dropped to an empty plaza near the station, felt like a half-drowned voice breaking through. I spent the first few days after that wandering the surrounding blocks, looking for any marker, any sign. That was late March, when the jacarandas were just blooming their sticky violet flowers along Alameda Street. By April, something inside me had reshaped itself so that all unused seconds got poured back into that place. Every excuse to be near Union Station's main concourse. At first, I justified it logically. The GPS point was exact, within the lower patio near the eastern entrance, right beside the old compass rose embedded in the tile. It wasn't even a dead zone. Commuters passed through all day. A fountain gurgled nearby. There were no security barriers, just low sandstone walls and cycades, thick with dust. I visited during lunch breaks after work, early Sunday mornings. Nothing ever happened, which both grounded me and hollowed something out. I didn't expect paranormal theatrics. I'm a structural engineer by training, historically rational. But I did begin to notice something I couldn't unsee. The pigeons. Always 20 or more, black-feathered ones mostly, clustered just along the southern lip of the lower steps as if arranged by some unseen hand. And they never moved properly. No flapping when startled. No bobbing head motions. They didn't even blink. You could throw change near them, approach too fast from behind, and nothing. Not fright, not flight. And oddly, on days I ran late and arrived an hour later or earlier, there they still were. Same number, same crooked neck angles. I began photographing them. 77 images over 3 weeks. I overlaid them. Pixel for pixel. No variation in layout. Not one bird shifting posture. The same molted tail feather on the front left one. The same bent leg tucked under the fifth from the right. One Sunday at 3:10 p.m., I stayed watching long enough to notice the security camera across from the ticket booths began rotating back toward me exactly every 7 minutes. 7 flat, no drift. I timed it again and again. It twitched left, scanned the subway staircase, then always returned to the courtyard as if checking up. I tried asking the metro maintenance guy about the cameras, what kind of rotation schedules they ran, but he shrugged and said they were supposed to be motion activated with minor diagnostic sweeps every 15 minutes. That discrepancy could be a glitch, I thought. Old hardware, maybe. Then I noticed a second inconsistency. The temperature in the courtyard never changed. Not just mild, frozen, 66 degrees. I say that with certainty because my Apple Watch, which tracks ambient climate, synced several times to the exact same degree upon stepping within the compass tile grounds. Outside that circle, the spring day was climbing toward the mid-80s. Tomatillo vendors were wiping sweat. But 3 feet inward, and a coldness that was not merely shadow clung to my sleeves. I made efforts to stop going. I removed the station map app. I blocked out the coordinates with electrical tape on my dashboard GPS screen. And yet I'd find myself parked on Cesar Chavez Avenue at dusk, hands trembling slightly, as if the act of not entering the station required more willpower than the return itself. I passed a breaking point on May 12th. That was the day I saw Eric standing underneath the fountain arch at exactly 3:45, just where the artificial waterfall slinks behind the iron gate to no visible maintenance door. He was dry, too dry, as if no water or dust had touched him since vanishing. He wore the same slate jacket from a year ago, buttons misaligned, eyes bloodless but focused. And he looked calm, still. No attempt to beckon, just waiting. I moved toward him fast, down the ramp, squinting to make sure it wasn't a hallucination, a play of glass and mist. But he stepped backward into the shadows before I reached him. I didn't follow. I waited 6 thoroughly measured minutes, then walked back to the newsstand, pretending I hadn't felt the air go thick and metallic in my throat. I went home and stopped speaking to anyone for a few days. I turned silencing off and let every phone call ring, even from numbers I didn't recognize, which had started to call at odd minutes after 3:45 p.m. Never voicemails, never from the same number twice. When I picked up, all I heard was a hiss crackling like digital low-pressure steam, always interrupted at the 19-second mark, with a click so sharp it made my ear twitch involuntarily. I recorded 8 of them, played them backward, tried audio visualization. The waveform spikes weren't random. They formed a pattern almost, like a looped staircase descending into auditory negative space. My friend Lana, sound engineer for an indie film crew, analyzed one and said, offhand, "This feels like a degradation loop with no intro, just the tail sleeve repeating the cut." She blinked, confused. That shouldn't be possible in voice calls. Meanwhile, everything else in my life began slipping slightly out of true. My emails started auto-correcting words I didn't write, swapping return with rotate and arrive with complete. The lights in my bathroom would flick on during showers, but only in reverse strobe patterns, like someone trying to communicate in Morse. And my dreams refused to behave. They started at Union Station courtyard, always silent, always that 66-degree click in the throat, always the same 17 pigeons, lined along the stair edge. Only now, instead of eyes, they had the black rotary dial faces of old payphones, faintly pulsing. Given everything, I did what I thought was the last rational step. I reported Eric missing again, this time to a different jurisdiction, and included his coordinates and my sightings, dressed it in enough plausibility to avoid being flagged unstable. Officer Naresh took it down without raising an eyebrow. "We'll check the station perimeter," he said, jotting notes with a stylus onto his iPad. I insisted he verify the courtyard temperature reports, asked if their patrols ever stationed there. That was when I noticed they never did. In the dozens of times I'd been there, not one LAPD uniform had passed through the coordinates at the times I went. Naresh hesitated before saying, "That area is not technically in our direct patrol path. Transit handles most of that. But transit cops, I'd observed too, always looped at perimeter, never on the compass tile. The moment that finally broke causality, but not my sanity, occurred on June 18th. I had arrived earlier than usual, around 3:29, and brought with me a thermal camera mounted to a handheld flyer unit, borrowed under pretense from a friend in construction. I pointed at belt height from Union Station's interior arcade entrance, slowly pivoted down into the courtyard. The first thing the screen showed was exactly what I feared. A visible temperature drop from 84 degrees to 66 degrees the moment my foot crossed the boundary onto the tile. The drop wasn't localized either. The entire compass circle showed up as matte blue against the orange glow of the afternoon sun. But then, on a second pass of the camera, without moving position, I saw something stranger. In the infrared, faint human-shaped silhouettes stood stock still across the courtyard steps. 17 of them, not warm, just voids, the exact temperature as the pigeons. No features, no clothing, frozen in mid-step, wrists bent at angles, one with its leg protruding through a railing like a figure re-rendered too close to collision. I lowered the unit immediately. Naked eye, nobody there. No figures, just pigeons. Same as ever. I lifted the FLIR again. This time I counted 18. I did not run. I wanted to. Instinct clawed for control, but I forced my fingers to open maps, not to track where I was, but time. 3:44:57. Just 3 seconds before I always saw him. As I raised my head, expecting the figure by the fountain to reappear, something even smaller failed first. All noise disappeared. Not in a way you'd notice at once. More like noticing what isn't missing. The aircraft overhead froze into silence. A scooter that had been skittering down the plaza cut off its hum mid-rattle but coasted forward as if sound had been erased, not paused. Even the water slap behind the iron gate fizzled out like faked ambiance ending a recording. I was left with only the sound of my own pulse, and even that muted. From the periphery, the security camera began, for the first time, to rotate outside its loop. It turned a few degrees beyond the usual and locked onto me. When my vision returned to color, instead of the pale fuzz seeping in from the thermal unit, I saw Eric again. This time closer, standing halfway up the steps. Except he wasn't facing me. He seemed confused, mouth slightly open, shoulders hunched, like he'd gotten lost halfway through a story. I stepped forward instinctively, but then he raised one hand and pointed, not at me but to the far side of the courtyard, to a group of people I hadn't seen arrive. A circle of 7 or 8, dressed like ordinary LA commuters, except they moved in exact sync, turning their heads together, blinking at once in 4-second intervals like a programmed troupe. They didn't speak, not even to each other. Each held small, obsolete objects, floppy disks, CRT remotes, a corded field telephone. One carried a white cassette player dangling from a severed strap. As I looked between them and Eric, who remained frozen midway in his gesture, I felt the air behind me shift, not in temperature, in pattern. The sound layer of the world flickered back on, but in the wrong sequence. Pigeons cooed before they opened their mouths. The fountain resumed 30 seconds late, sputtering like a copied recording played out of sync. A metro announcer's voice echoed from the lobby behind, but her words were garbled, looped. Now, departing, now, arriving. And then I broke something. I ran toward Eric. The moment my foot crossed from the stone tile to the fountain walkway, everything brightened to brilliant, colorless white and dimmed down again in reverse, like a film strip stopped and then reeled backward. And I was back at the top of the stairs, 3:29 on my watch. I was sweating, but the air around me remained 66 degrees. I reached into my pocket and found a folded Amtrak ticket to San Diego, dated June 18th, time-stamped for 9:20 a.m. Not mine. Issued to Eric H. I haven't left the city since. Every third day, I return at a different hour, wearing different glasses, clothing, even scanning with no tech at all. Eric appears only on certain time thresholds now. Exact quarter-hour marks. Never smiles. Seems less present. And more pigeons stand still each visit. I'm counting 21 now. One day they'll align perfectly with the silhouettes I saw once on the FLIR. And this is the new shape of my life. I wait to see which moment I will repeat, which frame I will unroll again, by mistake. My phone no longer tells the correct time, not when approaching Union Station. The clocks on all public transfers read different hour stamps when viewed from each entrance. I am no longer sure if I'm aging outside the courtyard's perimeter. I no longer dream in linear images. I hear the loop hiss on every third breath. Sandwiched behind the sound of water and wings, I would leave. I would, if not for one thing. Last week, standing in front of the arrivals board near track 12, I noticed my own face captured in the glass, just above platform information, but hazy, delayed by a quarter second. When I turned slightly in real time, so did the reflection. Then it didn't. And I understood. I am not just returning to Union Station. I am already part of whatever there returns to me.